The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
Want to shake up your small business marketing? I mean, really shake it up.
Studio 21 Podcast Café.
Have you been thinking about doing your own podcast?
Studio 21 Podcast Café.
Would you like to take your business to the next level?
Studio 21 Podcast Café.
This is the golden age of podcasting, and it's time to stop thinking and start doing.
Studio 21 Podcast Café.
Get your message heard 24/7, 365, over and over again.
Studio 21 Podcast Café.
Welcome to the 21st century.
Welcome to the Studio 21 Podcast Café.
Here's the creator and host of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, David Garofalo.
Well, welcome everybody to the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is a 21-minute or less weekly podcast to help you get your message out, grow your business, and build your bottom line. Let me help you bring your marketing, advertising, and promotions into the 21st century. My name is David Garofalo. I've been doing podcasting since 2010. And I've created a six-figure income from doing just one of my podcasts. And I'm here to help you do the same. This is a 21-minute or less podcast. So let's start the clock. And here we go. We're off and running. Today, let's talk about some of the things you can do to get listeners. Get more listeners and new listeners. So that's what you want. If you're already doing a podcast, you want to get more listeners. If you haven't done a podcast yet, it's the first thing you need to do is get listeners, right? You have to build an audience. So if you have the audience, if in an audience already, we want to build it more. If you don't have one, you need to build one. So that's what we're talking about today. The first thing, the most important thing you need to do, we'll call it number one, is to be available, right? You need to be doing a podcast. The podcast has to be available. And if you're doing a podcast, you need to be consistent to your listeners. You got to be available to them. So they go on a weekly basis, a daily basis, a monthly basis, whatever you're doing. My recommendation is always a weekly basis. You should be there for them each and every time. If you're not consistent to them, they will not be consistent to you. Consistency is the number one marketing secret for the success of your podcast. It's number one. I'm going to say it over and over again. It's number one. Be consistent, and they will be consistent for you. Consistency breeds familiarity, right? They're familiar with you if you're consistent to them. Familiarity breeds confidence. The more familiar they are, the more confident they are of you, and the more confident you will be of your podcast. And confidence breeds loyal listeners. If you sound confident, you know what you're talking about, you're going to build loyal listeners on that fact that's happening, and fans that will help spread the word about your podcast. Another big thing, word of mouth. If you're able to have the listener doing it for you or with you, not just for you, but with you, it's going to help things go a lot faster. Instead of pushing that rock up the hill by yourself, you got a whole bunch of people pushing it down the hill with you. It's going to be a lot easier. It's hard to get a listener, but it's easy to lose one at the same time. So as you're building listeners, please don't forget the ones you already have. Love the ones you're with. Being consistent to them and providing a quality show is what's going to keep them hanging on. So a lot of people end up getting new listeners all the time, but they're losing listeners at the same time, and they're not having growth. You got to hang on to the ones you have, love the ones you're with, and build on top of that at the same time. That's the way we grow the business, right? And your podcast is going to become your business. A great show that is not consistent is not as successful as a very good show that is consistent. So, in other words, you have a great show, but you're not consistent. If my show isn't as great as yours, but I am consistent, I will be more successful than you will be. And it's just proven over and over that this has happened. Ed, am I talking right here?
You're talking right. You know I'm a numbers guy.
Right.
So we've got, whatever it is now, 16 shows.
Yeah.
where we get to see numbers.
Yes.
And,
And you're looking at the numbers of a whole bunch of people's podcasts because you're producing all their podcasts.
And I'm a pretty good judge of which ones may be better technically put together than the other ones. And everything we see bears out exactly what you're saying because, sometimes life gets in the way.
Yeah.
And people miss shows.
Right.
And we see it.
And you're paying the price.
And, which brings up another point. And I think you've brought it up on this before. That's why you need to have shows that are ready to go, right? Ones that are not
Shows in the can, we called it. And we have an episode that's on there. Have some extras, untime stamped.
Correct.
That won't be where you're going to say next week such and such is happening, or make sure you see me at this place, or whatever it's going to be. But more of a generic show on a topic that can be put on at any time.
Things do happen.
Yeah, snowstorm happens. Here we are getting ready for winter in the Northeast. You get the flu. You can't come in. You're not feeling good.
Listen, the other thing that happens, too, is sometimes you've got a lot of creative energy. Well, while you have that, knock out some shows for the times where you're kind of dragging and you're not sure.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Take it serious, though, and be consistent to the listener. Imagine you have a news program that you watch every single night, and because the guy's not feeling good today, the show isn't on. No, the show must go on.
Exactly.
Right? This is show business, right? If you're treating the podcast properly, it is a business. It's show business. Treat it that way. A great show that is not consistent is not as successful as a very good show that is consistent. Remember that. You can become great, but if you're not consistent, you are not great. No one's going to know it. There's not going to be anybody there listening. So to get new listeners, go to your friends first. Okay, so we all have social media in some way or another. If you're doing a podcast, or you're going to be doing a podcast, it's coming up, or you just loaded a podcast up there, go to your social media and drop it in. Not once in a while, consistently every single time.
Right.
And that's the way to do it first, because these people already know you, trust you, like you, right? These are your friends.
Depending on where you're hosting the podcast, a lot of them have tools to do that, right? You can just set it up to automatically post when new episodes go up.
Yep. But if you don't, grab the link, put it up there, and say, hey, guys, I put up a new podcast. Check this out.
And certainly when you're launching, launch an appeal to your friends. Hey, I'm doing this new thing.
Those are the only people you know right now.
Right. I need your help. Share this.
Drop your podcast on all your social media pages, personal pages, and your show's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. What? You don't have a page for your show? Put one up. Guess what? It's free. Put one up for your show, and then copy that or share that link to your personal page. In other words, telling all your personal friends, hey, I have another page for you to like too. Yeah. So now you're going to build that at the same time, right? How easy is this? Yeah. And ask for them to share it, and that's when things go viral. When you hear that word viral, it's one person sharing it to a whole bunch of people they know. So go to your friends first. But that isn't all. The before, during, and after effect. That is when you're going to put information out before the show is even airing. So this week on the Snack Authority, we're going to be eating pretzels. And I put up a picture of Jessica holding the bag of pretzels, and that's the before. This is 4 days before the show is even going to air. So people are already engaging. That's what the show is going to be about. That day of the show, I'm going to say tune in this morning, and you're going to catch it if you want to catch it live. And that's the during. Then the after effect is on the Snack Authority Facebook page is going to be the link of the show, and it may be the audio link or the video link or both. Why not? Two separate things. And then on my personal page, I'll share that to my personal page for my personal friends to do it. Yeah. This is a new podcast, the Snack Authority, that we did. So we're doing the before, during, and after effect. We have another show that I've been doing since 2010 that I talked to you about that has created the six-figure income from me. It's the Cigar Authority. And I do the same for that. So the before, during, and after effect. And this is all to people that already know me, not to reaching out to other people, but that's where we start, right? You start with people that know, like, and trust you. What can you say to them to tune in? The tease and the ask. And I'm going to get to the tease next week. We're going to go to a whole show about teasing the shows and things like that. But you tell them a little of something. Like I said, this week is pretzels. And, maybe I say something like we have 3 battling against each other. You'll be surprised to see which one I like. Okay, so there's a little tease of what it is. So I've told you that the show is going to be about pretzels, that there's going to be 3 competing against each other, and you might be surprised to see which one I like the best. A little tease, maybe a little something that's going to make you say, geez, I wonder what that's all about. Let me tune in. ABC, always be closing. Catch it on the podcast. Always be closing, promoting what you're promoting on there at all times. I wanted you to tune into the Snack Authority show in this particular thing, so I'm closing you to say find it on your favorite podcast catcher, subscribe to it, like it. Just always trying to close it and put something in there to try to make that happen. Promote it on everything and anything. So let me even go as far as to your email signature. So, if I'm David Garofalo and I own Two Guys Smoke Shop, a cigar shop, but I have the Cigar Authority, why not put the Cigar Authority underneath it? In mentioning it, it's a little promotion. Somebody says, what's this, the Cigar Authority thing? And they click it. It's on the email signature. Now the Snack Authority is part of it. I put it in the email signature. Who knows? I'm sending emails or somebody's writing to me to try to sell something. I respond, geez, I'm not really interested. And there's my email signature. I'm even promoting to somebody there. Non-stop promotion of the product.
Sometimes the easiest way is to have a domain for your podcast.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, have your own webpage.
Then you just put, www.thecigarauthority.com, have it in the signature, and even if you don't do any more than that, people are going to be interested. Well, what's that?
Cost you nothing. They're going to click on it, and I don't have any stats on it, but let's say 1 out of 100 people do it, and you send 1,000 out there during the course of a year, you got an extra.
If you set the web page up right, then the information is there for how they can subscribe to the podcast or listen to it on the page.
And if you have a business associated to it and you end up grabbing a new customer from it, it's not the sale that ended up happening. It's the lifetime value of that customer and that customer's friends who passes it on to you. It can add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars that could be in here because you added some of these little integral things that are in there. You can put it on your business card also. So you're a business card and you're a plumber and you put your plumbing information and you have a plumbing podcast, you put that on there. If you had a snack podcast on there, what's the difference? It's a line on your business card, and who knows, you're going to grab another listener on there. Do it on your email and your email list. When you are having a podcast, your whole email list of all your friends and associates over the years. Hey, just dropping you a quick line. I have a new podcast out there. It's about snacks. Maybe you're interested and you have a snack every once in a while. I know I do, and I love them. Maybe you want to give a listen to it sometime.
I shared with you that I posted on my Facebook page and heard from somebody I hadn't seen in 30 years saying they'd love to be on the Snack Authority.
There we go. So you never know what could happen on there on your list, your Rolodex, basically, of there. And it's so easy now as it was before. They actually, years ago, call every person up. You don't want to actually intrude on them either, but dropping everybody a mass email mentioning this to them. And I don't say you hit them up every day or anything. No. Every once in a while you do it. You're going to build your audience from the people you already know already. Yep. Do you post it on your personal social media pages? Yes. Post it everywhere you can possibly can, but what about other places on social media that's there? We're going to get to that. How about doing your podcast live on Facebook, which is what we started doing? I'll tell you, what I'll say about that is you treat the Facebook podcast like somebody's not going to Facebook to listen to a podcast. They are going to Facebook to engage in people, and you're going to be part of the feed. And it's an advertisement, basically, that your feed is on there. Yeah. That is not where people are going to consume podcasts. They're going to a podcast catcher to consume podcasts. They're going on to a video show, like a YouTube, to consume video. Don't confuse these things. They're going on social media to socialize, not to listen to a podcast. But your podcast being up there costs you nothing to do it, and maybe you're going to pick up some people that will end up subscribing to it and listening to it on a podcast. Don't think that they're going to go every week to their Facebook page.
It brings awareness.
Yeah. Into people that might not know that it even existed.
Right.
So there it is as an advertising. Doing all this is simply an investment in time. But how about money? Should you spend a little money attracting new listeners to your show? We're going to get to that in just 1 minute.
If you're in the area of Boston North into southern New Hampshire and you're thinking about doing a podcast, there is a place you have to see. It's called Studio 21 Podcast Café. Located right over the border into Salem, New Hampshire, Studio 21 Podcast Café is a live, working, full-service podcast and vodcast, that's video on demand, studio. All professional equipment, professional producer, and total distribution of your podcast is done for you. Would you like search engine optimization for more people to find your business or better ranking on Google? Well, Studio 21 Podcast Cafe can do it all for you for far less than you think. Schedule a free 21-minute no-obligation consultation by going to www.studio21podcast.cafe. That's studio21podcast.cafe. Now, back to the program.
And we are back, and today we're talking about getting some listeners to listen to your podcast. More listeners, and now new listeners. We talk about attracting people that you already know. How about people you don't know, but might be interested in your subject? Where are you going to find them? How are you going to let them know that you exist? What are some of the thoughts? And one is go to social media groups, pages on the subject that you're talking about. And without spamming, that's an important word. You're not going to be dropping these things in, spam the hell out of it, because they'll hate that. You want to get the word out. And you do that by socializing within that group and then getting that information in.
You never pretend to be other than what you are, because people always know when you say, hey, I found this great podcast. They always come back, yeah, but it's your podcast.
It's yours, right. That's why it's a great podcast. So be true to yourself. Get it in there. Be a little creative on it. Engage into a thread of what somebody's talking about. And listen, by having it in your Facebook profile that it's there, they're going to realize that you're there also. But every once in a while, there'll be an opening, which is what I like to call it. Mm-hmm. Here's an opening for me to be able to put it in there, and then the opening exists, and I throw it in there. By the way, I have a podcast on this.
If it's a group where, the topics are things you talk about, and somebody posts something, well, it's perfectly valid to say, well, we discussed that on my podcast this week.
Correct. So look for those openings that happen.
So where you're actually providing value to the conversation going on.
Right, absolutely. So how about boosting your post on social media with a little boost? And that shows up as ads, right? Every once in a while you put some on there and it says, would you like to boost this? This came, and especially when you're not on your personal, when you're on a business one, it pops up every time. That asks you for a boost.
Every day I see dozens of those.
Right. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. I'm in the cigar business, and my primary show is called The Cigar Authority. And anytime I post anything on that subject, it asks me if I want to boost it. And the answer is yes. I'm willing to pay to boost it. But here's the interesting thing. They won't accept my money because I'm in the tobacco business, so I cannot boost it. I would if I could, but I can't, so I won't.
So they say, do you want to do this? You say yes. They say, how does it feel to want?
You're right. I say, yes, I want to do it, and I'll hit $10 or something. And then 24 hours later, they say, we don't accept it because you have tobacco. So I do it every once in a while, so they stop.
To see,
for them to stop asking me.
Right.
Or maybe they'll change their mind, because the product I have is not an illegal product by any means, but it's their rules, right? They don't want to end up doing it. But your podcast can build even more if you want to invest a little bit of money. And I'm not saying invest a fortune, but you ended up doing a great show. You're proud of it. Is it worth $10 to you? Boost it and try to get some new people on it. And if they end up hearing that great show that you felt like you did the best show you've ever done before, maybe you're going to gain some more subscribers and more listeners.
And the things that require little time or little money, you don't have a lot to lose by trying it. See what happens.
That's right. So invest a little bit. You invest a lot of your time and maybe a little bit of money and then working side by side. It's like people that go to the gym and don't diet, or the people that diet and don't go to the gym. Imagine working both of them side by side. It's going to pan off better, right? So do all the work and energy and effort you can to do to the people you know, and put a little bit of money into it and let them work together as opposed to against each other. How about a short promo of your show for this week's episode? Like I told you, I put a little picture of Jessica holding the pretzels. How about if it was a short video? When I mean short, I'm talking about 10 or 15 seconds, like you see short things that happen on TV. And that little short thing on your social media pages is going to get attention, right? Facebook, by the way, loves video. So you throw a 10-second thing, and you do it right with your phone. A little 10-second thing. Hey, be sure to check my thing out and whatever. And a little fun, a little engaging type of thing.
And if you have an episode that you're particularly proud of, or maybe you got, a big guest on the show, do a quick Facebook Live and tell people, hey, I just put this up here. I'm really proud of this. Have a look at it.
Short and sweet.
Yep.
Get to the point, because what you want to do is not give all your information there. Throw a little tease on it and get them to the show, right? So you're driving people to the show, teasing them to go there. ABC always be closing. Your whole thought process there is to get them to subscribe and get to your show. There are ways to get your podcast listened to, but it does require a little bit of work, time, energy, and maybe even a little bit of money. Will you invest in your show? We'll get to that next week. I hope you will invest in your show, because when you look to monetize it someday, you'll be asking people to invest in it. I hope you're willing to do it yourself in time, energy, at the very least. Are you going to do it? I'd love to help, and I'd love to work with you. Contact me at dave@studio21podcast.cafe. That's dave@studio21podcast.cafe. Schedule a free 21-minute meeting with me. Let me show you the studio. We'll talk about your thoughts, your plans, and I'll even buy you a cup of coffee. That's it. Next week, the big difference between the cost of your podcast versus investing in your podcast. That's my 21 minutes or less, and we're out of here. You've been listening to the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, live from the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe on the United Podcast Network.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.